All right, today I want to talk about section 8.1, angle classification. And this one's going to be a pretty easy section, as the first section in most of these chapters is or are. And we're really just going to be talking about four different styles of angles and kind of what an angle is. And the four different ones we're going to be really looking at are acute, obtuse, right, and straight. First, let's take a look at what an angle is. An angle is just happens when any two lines intersect. So let's write our little angle. It forms when any two lines intersect. It might look like this. It might be inside of a circle. And we often denote the actual angle part with a little angle section. And sometimes they can be even larger. If I put it inside of this circle like this, and I make my angle here, I can be looking at this angle that goes around the entire outer edge. And these are all different kinds of angles. And let's look again back to what each of these means. Now, we measure angles in degrees. And the way that we do that is we do it within a circle. So recall that within a circle, there are 360 degrees. That means that if I had an angle that was the entire circle, which doesn't really make sense, it would be 360 degrees. But if I drew one, for example, that had half the circle, like this would be 180 degrees, because that's 360 divided by 2. For example, now if I would just wanted a quarter of the circle, I would have 90 degrees. And in fact, most of the angles that we're going to be looking at and using are between these two sides. Now, you don't often see them in circles like this. In fact, you see them outward. But what we see is we have four different ways to label these angles typically. Acute angles are the very small angles. And they typically go from 0 degrees to 90 degrees, not including 90 degrees. They may look very, very small, things like this. And of course, I'm meaning that angle inside. And if this was, say, 15 degrees, they also may look slightly larger, like this. And they may be 85 degrees. But the point of an acute angle is that it is typically smaller and it is less than 90 degrees. Now, our obtuse angles are larger than our acute angles, and they typically go from 90 degrees to 180 degrees. And they don't include those two sides. So they might look like this. Maybe this is 110 degrees. Or they may even be larger, and they may look like that. Well, that's kind of the same, I guess. We'll call that 150. Now, I'm not actually measuring them. I'm kind of just estimating right now. But then I do have two specific angles. And this is a right angle is when I have exactly 90 degrees. And a straight angle is when I have exactly 180 degrees. A right angle looks like this. It's like the corner of a box, you could say. Looks like this. And instead of typically putting a rounded angle marker inside, we put a little square. And this tells us it's a right angle. And right angles are key in math, and especially in geometry. We're going to see these right angles showing up all over the place, and we can use them to prove things because they're so handy and useful. Now, the right angle doesn't have to be sitting like that, of course. It can be sideways, but the key is that it is still exactly square and 90 degrees. Lastly, we have our straight angle. That's going to be very similar to the one that we had below. Our straight angle goes like this. It's basically a straight line, except we might put an angle marker within the side. And this one is going to be always equal to 180 degrees. Looks like I made this video a little bit blurry. Sorry about that. I'll fix that for the next one. And these are the 4 different kinds of angles, and you're going to be doing some classification based on them. And that's really all you're going to do in this first section. And it shouldn't be too bad. Go ahead and good luck.